What is up, beautiful minds across the internet? I've been thinking about thinking. What are thoughts? Where do they come from? How does the mind work? Well, to help answer these questions, I'll break down the different aspects of the mind with a framework I've created and I like to call the energy mind framework. The mind is a tool. Like a sharp knife, if you do not know how to use it well, you'll cut yourself. And this is why most people have depression, anxiety, or are stressed. The mind receives information inputs that create the experience using the senses. So now, let's go deeper into understanding this mind. Let's use this framework. I've split it into 7 dimensions, 7 aspects of the mind so we can understand how it works better. And each dimension of the mind is a feature or a tool that everyone's mind has the capability of using. And each dimension of the mind, I will use an example of the apple to understand the visualization of how each mind works. Because each dimension has a correlated dimension through the visionary. So you can use this trick to understand where your mind is at and how you can access other tools. So let's jump into the energy mind framework. And we'll start from the first and go all the way up to the 7th. All right, so let's start from the first dimension. The first dimension of the mind will be associated with instincts. This is where your mind and body connection is super good and there's no input lag. You can see this tool being used in athletes in the flow state. This is a mastery of this tool. There seems to be no internal dialogue for you just present in this state. There is no knowing, there just is. The second dimension of the mind will be associated with emotional states, where your mind can be creative and can understand emotions. This aspect of your mind is the EQ, or emotional intelligence. And at a greater mastery, allows you to understand people's emotions and vibrations. Examples of people with good mastery over the 2D mind are people who are super empathetic or people who are really good at reading the vibe. Visualization in this aspect of the mind is 2-dimensional level, as in like a 2D drawing. In our example, the apple, as the object of visualization, you will see a 2D image of an apple. The third dimension of the mind is the logical tool. The mind's visualization properties goes to 3D, having visual objects in the brain as a 3D image. Using the example of the apple, we could see the apple from one side, but it's a 3D model. The mastery of this tool is to control the ability to focus. People who are successful in a career choice are usually using this tool. ADHD is another term for this tool of the mind. It's being mislabeled or just causing some misusage. ADHD is not a bad thing, but how we use it is important. This is also why we are seeing more and more people have ADHD. Humans are evolving, gaining access to this tool. The limitations of this tool is that it always reaches paradoxes, which this tool cannot process. The fourth dimension of the mind is associated with balance, understanding, and compassion. The tool allows one to think abstractly. Visually, the mind has the capability of 4D, and no, not 4-dimension time. This is seeing a 3D object in all angles. Let us look at the example of the apple. You would be seeing any side of the 3-dimensional object of the apple, the top, side, bottom. And then another term is dyslexia. This is why people have such a hard time reading. It is that visually, they see objects in 4D, and why P and D look the same. With the 4D mind, super abstract complex tasks can be understood using this tool. This is why you see mechanical engineers, mechanics, and people in those types of fields with dyslexia. The 5th dimension of the mind, I would call it the gateway to quantum. Visually, you are now experiencing things in the 5th dimension. And this dimension is actually time. Using the apple example again, we could see the whole timeline of the apple, from start to finish, from a seed to a tree or to being eaten. You're starting to work your way up from the paradox or the truths or infinity to the experiences. Another label for this is psychosis. This label has a negative connotation because people who are not prepared to receive this viewpoint will be overloaded. For you need the fourth dimension of the mind to be at a certain level of mastery, so you can kind of understand and have better ability to understanding how the tools of the next three work. Which is why the fifth dimension, sixth dimension, and seventh dimensional mind can be all labeled under psychosis. This tool is how famous scientists and spiritual teachers discovers brilliant amounts of things. So the next would be the sixth dimension of the mind. It gets crazier. I would call this one the observer mind. This tool is used to zoom in and out. This state of the mind can see the big picture. This zoomed in and / out perspective enhances all the other minds. The visualization aspect is just the ability to zoom in and out, micro and macro. Using the example of the apple, we would be able to go deeper than molecular and zoom out further than we can even see the apple. And then there's the seventh dimension of the mind. I would also refer it to as infinity. This tool is to fuel all the other minds. For being in this state of the mind, there is nothing but being. More one than one can describe. Infinity is nothing and nothing is infinity. The visualization is seeing everything and nothing all at once. Let's use the apple visualization example. You would see the apple in every dimension, but also in none, as well as in everything else. The seventh dimension of the mind and the first dimension of the mind are very similar in this aspect. It is just oneness. There is no separation. So there is no action, just being. Tapping into the tool of the seventh dimension of the mind is tapping into infinite intelligence. Cool. Now I gave you a brief understanding of the framework. Do not want you to be overwhelmed. Understand that some people naturally sit in different parts of the mind. There's no good or bad which you naturally sit at or start at. And everyone has access to all of these tools. So just be happy that you are already pretty good at using one tool. To sharpen these tools and have better access to these tools is actually quite simple as well. To learn to use the tools, we must learn more about ourselves, whether it's through meditation, constant questioning, and research. For example, I personally spent a lot of time researching ADHD because that's what I was labeled as since I was a kid. Lastly, this framework of the mind is about how your energy is being used and manipulated. And for people with understanding of the chakra system, this framework and that framework pair perfectly together. So, I've given you a little glimpse of the framework that I've created, the energy mind framework. I want you to use it as a blueprint to understand yourself more. I think it's very important for people to understand the tools of the mind. So, with this, go and learn about yourself and how you work, and go and be the best version of yourself you can be. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, leave comments, questions, or other topics that you would like me to talk about. Till next time, peace.